Hi everyone, welcome into this week's my weekly CBS fix. I hope you all had a wonderful week. In this week's Parsha Shoftim, the Torah teaches us how responsible and how careful we have to be with our actions. There's a common misconception when it comes to one of the mitzvos in the Ten Commandments. The sixth one is Lo Sirtzach, thou shalt not kill. That's how most people translate it, and I believe that it is a mistranslation. It really is thou shalt not murder, because there are times that a person is allowed to kill. As a matter of fact, sometimes there's an obligation to kill. One of those times is if somebody's coming to kill you, you are obligated to kill that person first. So killing in itself is not necessarily a forbidden act. Murder, which usually is synonymous with premeditated and thought out and calculated way to end a person's life, that is what is forbidden. So there's a difference between murder and killing. Yet in this week's parsha, the Torah says that if you are, let's say, chopping wood and you're using an axe and you're a nice guy and everything's going okay, except the fact that you didn't check your axe before you used it and you weren't careful enough to make sure that the metal part of the axe is sturdy on the wooden part of it. Instead, it was actually a little rickety, and you went swinging away. And what happened was that axe went right into a tree, and the metal part of the axe flew off and went into somebody else and killed that person. The Torah calls that person a murderer. Murder, not killed, a murderer. And we have to understand why. The murderer actually goes to one of the three cities in which he can take refuge. So we see that he is not actually punished as a murderer. He is not taken out of there and given a trial and put to death, but nevertheless, the Torah calls him a murderer. So why is the Torah calling him a murderer? And why does Hashem write in the Torah, he is a murderer, if he's not actually a murderer? It was not intentional, it wasn't premeditated. So we see from over here that the Torah is trying to impress upon us the sanctity of an individual life, the responsibility that we have. And everything that we do, we have to be extremely, extremely careful with how it's planned out. And therefore, even times where we think that we have a right to be doing such a thing, for example, we're driving a car. You drive a car, but you have to be very, very careful. You have to stop at every stop sign. If you want, you could just watch any video on YouTube about people who, serious accidents. Most of them are from people crossing the street when they're allowed to, and drivers being irresponsible, just going right through, God forbid. It's terribly sad, but that person is called a murderer, and that person acted irresponsibly. But in another case, let's say you light candles for something, to be very careful with where children are during that entire time, or anything that you do, even if you do it with permission to do it, as one certainly has permission to chop a tree, but nevertheless, it is the incumbent upon every single person that they have to be very, very responsible in all matters of safety. And we might think, this is a Torah law? This is something simple. No, this is a Torah law. The preciousness and the sanctity of every single human life is something that we have to etch into our heads as much as possible. It's very, very important for us. That is a very important stress, and therefore the Torah stresses it, and therefore Hashem wrote that he is actually a murderer to inculcate into us this idea that the person actually is considered a murderer in Hashem's eyes, and therefore be very, very careful with all our actions. Have a great Shabbos. I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening.